David, go get strapped. Amen, somebody. I'm going to say, Bishop told us to get that. I said it. Go get strapped. Just got real quiet up in here. But you already know I'm a triple P. Amen. Y'all know what a triple P is, right? A pistol packing preacher. Amen, somebody. Thank you, Jesus. All right, share, y'all. Let's get it crunk. Thank you, Jesus. Like, share, all that stuff. Going live momentarily on the air. You've got a responsibility to go back to Lodabar. Your work's not done just because you made it to the palace. Going live on the radio momentarily. Tell somebody Bishop is on right now. Don't blow up the bridge. Thank you, Jesus. But reach your hand back down the ladder and pull somebody else up out of Lodabar. Rep your city, rep your town. Thank you, Jesus. Get my Stevie on. Let's go. Somebody got to tell themselves it's all right if you got it now. Just hold it for me. I'll be there to get it after a while. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. You got to make up in your mind that what God has for me, it is for me. I might not have it right now. I may not get it next week because you might try to stop me from getting it. But if God said it's mine, I want you to know after a while, I'm going to get what belongs to me. Sometimes God got to strip what you got to, so you don't depend on yourself. He got to take away from you so you understand how to depend on El Shaddai. Come on in here. Thank you, Jesus. Our young people are dying. Cracked out. Suicide. Homicide. They'll kill you at the drop of a dime. Our jails are full. Yet the crime still runs rampant. Sometimes God got to strip what you got to, so you don't depend on yourself. Thank you, Jesus. All right, let's get this, y'all. 90.7 WTCC. Good morning and welcome to the Black Love Experience. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. And it is a beautiful Friday. It's been a beautiful week, man. I've had a wonderful week, very busy week, event-filled week, but it's been a great week. We've been in our annual workers meeting for the Vermont jurisdiction of the Church of God in Christ, our workers meeting and our fellowship conference. And we were in Vermont, Brattleboro. Love the scenery, the mountain view, and all that stuff. We were there early part of the week and had such a wonderful experience. Great worship service. My friend, the Bishop Bernard Reese from the Greater New Hampshire jurisdiction, preached for us while we were there. We heard from Pastor Robert Haygood, who gave us a dynamic morning manna word. We heard from Assistant Supervisor Lillian Moy. We had workshops. We just had a great time. And man, the worship experience was, whoo, you had to be there. You had to be there to experience it. We've been in our fellowship conference in Bridgeport, and it's been dynamic. Bishop Victor Rush came through like a Russian mighty wind. He and his daughter, the acclaimed Kimberly Joy, sang the house down. Mother Valerie Fields, our jurisdictional supervisor, preached on last night. I'll be preaching tonight in Bridgeport at the Holy Tabernacle Church of God in Christ. And then early in the morning off to Detroit for the funeral of one of our bishops. So it's been a very busy week, but eventful, refreshing. And shout out to my wife, Cynthia, who's been my chauffeur, driving me back and forth. And it's not really just out of the goodness of her heart that she's had a great time being in fellowship with one another. And to greatest church in the world, the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ. Appreciate you all so very much. And we'll see you all on tonight. One more night, and we close out our workers meeting. Listen. There was a case in Jacksonville that I talked about where a black man was murdered, and someone decided they wanted to chime in on that case to kind of correct me about my take on it. That I shouldn't assume that it was racially motivated, and all that stuff. And anyway, there was back and forth an exchange, and it devolved into him calling me pimps and prostitutes, pimp preacher, the tired old adage, pimp preachers and prostituting for the Democrats. And you all know, anybody who follows me, whether it's on social media, on the radio, or just in terms of my activities throughout the community and the nation, y'all know good and well I ain't hardly a prostitute for Democrats. That I give Democrats plenty of smoke, but when you have nothing else, you lean on the same old talking points. And the sad reality is this gentleman, Dr. Boyce Watkins, is a guy that I used to have a modicum of respect for. As a matter of fact, I've had him at my church, spoke during my annual lecture series. You all know I bring renowned folks from across the world to the city for my annual lecture series. And he has been blessed to be one of those speakers. But now he's decided that I'm a pimp. And so my question to him is, since you came to get paid from me to speak for me, who do pimps usually pay? I mean, that y'all can answer that question yourself. But in any case, I'm gonna talk about it.
See, sometimes folk let the collars fool them, and they think because you're a preacher, you're supposed to lay down and let folks walk over you, say whatever they want to say about you, and all that stuff. Yeah, see, if y'all think I'm that turn the cheek dude who let you spit all over me, urinate on me, and tell me it's raining. Yeah, I'm not that soft target. In the words of my girl Teslin Figaro, yeah, I ain't a soft target. Um, so that's why I titled this show, "If It's Smoke You Want, It's Smoke You Get." Bottom line, um, it is what it is. So 413-736-2781, 413-736-2781. Rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Like, share, subscribe, do all that. Tell somebody Bishop is on the air. Take a quick music break, and we're coming right back with our conversation. Don't y'all go nowhere. It's Ferris Hill. Don't stop.
But the essence of growth is changing. The being of the road will be the end of the road. You can change. You gotta higher. You gotta deeper. Go a little further. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, yeah. You gotta deeper. Go a little further. Come on, don't stop. The essence of life is growth, but the essence of growth is change. The being of the road will be the end of the road if you refuse to change. Your life will never change until you get disgusted with where you are. Whatever you don't hate is what you tolerate. You must learn from the past, plan for the future, and live for the now. For it is your daily routine that determines your success or failure in life. It's a choice that you have made up to this point that will determine the rest of your life. So break the cycle that doing anything else is simply good enough. You only get out what you put in, so don't settle for the crumbs when you can have a whole lot. So push yourself beyond your limitations. Come on. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Don't stop. Come on. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Go a little further. Don't stop. So you gotta break the routine of trying to beat the system. Manipulators will always try to bypass the process for the quick progress. There are no shortcuts to success. There are no elevators to the top. You gotta take it one step at a time. You gotta break the routine of allowing others to get into your head and control who you are and where you're going. You see, when you're about the positive, you're gonna always have haters. But don't let your haters push you down, let your haters push you forward to the next level. So when people show you who they really are, don't perceive them to be something else that they're not. See, a zebra does not change his stripes, so you gotta keep pushing yourself to the next level. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Do a little further. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Do a little further. Come on. Come on. Come on. You gotta understand that greatness is the nature that you were born out of. You'll never
Come on, rep your city, rep your town, y'all.
in dedication. Greatness says more about who you are.
Where you chiming in from?
Greatness will always attract greatness. Show me your friends, and I'll show you the future. You're just a step away. You're just a step away. You're just a step away.
It's a little warm in here.
Come on. You're just
About to get hotter.
You're almost there. Come on. You gotta push yourself beyond your limitations. You see, there's no mountain too high, no valley too low. You can go where you want to go. It's all in the power of your imagination. You can see the invisible. You can do the impossible. So stretch yourself. Take yourself to the next level. Come on, come on, come on. It's a little higher. Dig a little deeper.
Go a little further.
Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper.
Go a little further.
Don't stop. Come on. Come on.
Let's go.
Go a little further.
I see you, Mary Bass.
Don't stop. Don't stop until you get your dream. Don't stop. Get your dream.
Good morning.
Don't stop until you get your dream. Don't stop. Get your dream. Come on. Yeah. Don't stop. Come on. Come on.
All right. Let's get it. We finna go back live, y'all. Over the air. Tell a friend, tell somebody we's on. We in here. Welcome everybody in the Pioneer Valley.
I look in the mirror and I like what I see.
I see you, St. Petersburg.
Black woman staring back at me. One who's seen a lot of pain and had her share of sorrow, but who never gave up hope for a fight.
Up. I see my girl Teslin up in here in the Twitter space.
But it just made me stronger and I refused to.
What's up, Instagram? What's up, Facebookers, YouTubers? Pioneer Valley.
Devil who said I wasn't good enough, cute enough, or worthy of love, I kicked his butt with divine power from above. Power that says I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me and brought me.
H-Town always up in here.
I'm beautiful. I'm a child of the King.
Come on, I need y'all to rep it.
He came to bring. Oh yes, I look in the mirror. I love what I see. She's looking good. That strong, beautiful.
Houston is always in here deep. 90.7 WTCC. Good morning. Welcome to the Black Love Experience. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. Once again, do me a favor, rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. I see, of course, as always, H-Town is always deep up. And I don't know, Springfield, I think sometimes H-Town be deeper than y'all. At least they be repping themselves like they are. Because they always up in here deep on Facebook and YouTube. So y'all letting them outshine you. And, and I'm in the field. Y'all can't be doing that. Can't let H-Town outshine you like that. I see St. Petersburg, Florida in the house. Toronto, Canada, Quebec is up in the house. The UK is in here. Who else is up in here? Let me see. Come on. Chicago is in the house. They always, there we go. Another H-Town. Where's the field at? Where y'all at in the field? Huh? Y'all just take me for granted in the field. I'm just supposed to know y'all here, right? I guess that's what I'm supposed to know. New Jersey. Welcome, New Jersey is in the building. New York City is in the building. Welcome, ATL. I see San Diego, California in here. Columbus, Ohio is in here. North Kakalaki. McDonough, Georgia is up in here. Good morning, VC the Wren. Follows me on Twitter. Good morning to you. Washington, D.C. is in the building. Good morning to everybody who's up in the building. So let 413 is here. I see you, 413. Jamaica via Atlanta. Good morning to everybody from everywhere who's in here. Alexandria, Virginia. Good morning to you. So listen, let's keep it a buck. I was going to have my friend Rudy McKissick call in to talk about that case in Jacksonville. He has an emergency. Say a prayer for him and his family. Good brother, and has his finger on the pulse of what's happening out there. Because it was a case that I was dealing with that happened in Jacksonville, Florida, um, that brought this on. And I'm not sure it was necessarily just that case, because for whatever reason, Dr. Boyce has been coming for a brother, for a little bit, you know, jumping on my commentary, saying little slick stuff. Um, and then it got a little over the top this time around, um, for whatever reason, whatever reason. So let me go back and tell you what I talked about. Um, there were three white boys. I say boys, they were grown, but they were very young. Um, and there's always been this narrative that is going around, basically trying to suggest that racism is dying out. You continually hear that it's a dying breed, it's dying out, it's not like it used to be, that the younger generation, the millennials and the Gen Zers, um, are more enlightened than their parents were. Race is not as big of an issue for them. And yet, those of us who kind of have our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the nation, we see um, the younger generation is being just as racist as their predecessors. And we measure that out based upon their actions. You can go to TikTok any day and catch 15, 16, 14-year-old white boys and girls saying and doing all kinds of racist foolery. Okay? 17, 18, 20, 22 year olds. Um, and there is no indication whatsoever that racism is dying on the vine. It's fading out. That this generation is much more tolerant. And first of all, I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be treated with respect. Um, um, and so when I saw that the ages of these young men who murdered a 34-year-old black man in Jacksonville, okay, chased him down, shot him, killed him, and left his body behind a dumpster. Um, 19 years old, 18 years old, and 21 years old. Three white boys, um, 18, 19, and 21. And so I said, tell me again about how racism is dying with the younger generation of white people. Now, well, Bishop, how do you know it was racism? Listen, I've been in America long enough, 50 plus years. I'm a student of history, and I'm a student of the contemporary times in which we live, to understand that it's always a safe assumption that if three white boys chase down a black man and murder him, that racial motivation likely played a part. That's not a stretch. That's not a leap. That's not an unreasonable assumption. They said the same thing when Ahmaud Arbery was jogging in Georgia and white men chased him down. Almost the same scenario. Chased him down, shot him to death. And then the police chose not to arrest any of them. It was safe to assume it was racially motivated. This is America. I always say the best indication of what a person will do is what they've done. The best indication of what the motivation is when white folks hunt down black people and murder them is what they've always done. And so along comes Dr. Boyce, sounding like he came straight out the MAGA camp, sounding like a straight up white supremacist, because the talking points he used were identical. When I say identical, I mean identical to the white supremacist talking points. The white supremacist talking points, whenever we condemn racially motivated killings of black people, racially motivated beatings of black people, racially motivated brutalization of black bodies, their response is always the same. How do you know it was about race? It's not always about race. That's always going to come up. Always. We don't know it's about race. Let's just wait and see what the racist cops say it was. Because, of course, we're supposed to believe the racist cops investigating themselves or investigating their fellow white supremacist vigilantes. That's always going to come up in the conversation. What's always going to come up in the conversation is, what about black on black violence? How come you guys are only worried about it when a white person kills a black person? It's always a deflection. Like, we're supposed to ignore what just happened because of so-called black on black violence. So if 3 white boys hunts down, my brother and murdered him, I'm supposed to be like, hey, no big deal because there's black on black violence. Y'all know how ignorant that sounds? But that always comes up. It's always a deflection. You guys aren't worried about it when black people kill other black people. First of all, that's ridiculous. That's a lot. How the hell you even come up with something that foolish? So you mean to tell me if a black person kills my family member, I don't care because they were black? How ignorant do you sound? Black people talk about crime in their neighborhoods. They talk about um, the problem of violence every single day. But you know what the major difference is? We don't ever have to worry about a black man killing another black man and going home for supper. We don't ever have to worry about the cops giving him the benefit of the doubt and letting him go. When a black man kills another black man, he goes to jail. We don't ever have to worry about justice being served. We don't ever have to worry about a black man choking somebody to death on a subway and going home to dinner. He goes to jail. Furthermore, there's no such thing. That's a misnomer. Black on black crime, black on black violence. People commit crime within proximity. Most of the time in the neighborhood they live in, most of the time against the people that they are around. It's proximity. And when you compare the statistics, they are identical. 90% of black people who get murdered are murdered by a black person. 88% of white people who are murdered by a white person. But y'all don't ever say white on white violence. White on white. Most of the white women that get raped by white men. Matter of fact, most of the people in America that get raped by white men. But let me stick to the subject. Most of the domestic violence against white women are, guess who? White men. But y'all don't ever talk about, what about white on white crime? So, of course, black on black crime always comes up whenever we're talking about the unjust brutalization of black bodies. It's always, how do you know it was about race? And then it's always about, the response is always, what about black on black crime? Then they always deflect to, what about Chicago? I don't live in Chicago. I don't live in Chicago. Yeah, they act like every black person lives in Chicago. Every black person is responsible for shit. And y'all do realize they didn't start the what about Chicago until Barack Obama became president. As soon as you got a black president from Chicago, they started dogging out Chicago and have been doing it ever since. If you remember correctly, they would talk about Barack Obama didn't do anything about crime in Chicago. Come on, they never said anything about George Bush did not not doing anything about crime in Texas, and they've been on the Chicago kick everything. And by the way, incidentally, just so y'all know, in terms of most violent cities in America, Chicago rates number 38. 38. There are 37 other cities that are considered more violent than Chicago. But it's now an embedded racist trope that whenever you talk about the brutalization of black bodies, what about Chicago is always going to come up. It's an embedded racist trope. And so that's the trifecta. That's the unholy trinity of deflective responses when you talk about the unjust murder of black people. It's not always about race. What about black on black crime? What about Chicago? Always gonna come up. So I talked about these three white boys being murdered in Jacksonville. And along comes Dr. Boyce Watkins. And see, unlike Boyce, I'm man enough to call his name. I'm not going to do the passive aggressive thing and say, some bishop, some pastor, pimp preachers. Negro, call my name. We know you talking about me. Boyce has my number. He got my personal cell phone. I text him when he started this foolishness. I'm like, man, what's up? What's going on? You know, I figured, I can go behind the scenes and squash it. Of course, he didn't respond back. He chose to jump on Twitter and say some old twisted stuff about pimps and prostitutes, about preachers being pimps and prostitutes. That's a punk move, boys. That's a punk move. First of all, if you're gonna talk about me, call my name. Then secondly, if you're gonna deal with the issue, deal with the issue. Why devolve into the name calling? We grown men. Why devolve into the name calling? So let me tell you. So his response to my condemning, and this is what's so egregious about it. I condemned what I assumed to be and what most of America assumes to be the racially motivated murder of a black man in Jacksonville, shot to death and body put behind a dumpster. I condemned that by three white boys. Boyce's response, hey, brother, direct quote. Hey, brother, I don't think we should assume that any time a white man kills a black person, it's related to racism. Three white boys murdered a black man, dumped his body behind a dumpster. He didn't say anything about the crime. He just said, hey, brother, man, I think this is horrendous. This is a terrible thing. No, brother, don't assume it's related to racism. Like, that's the most important thing in this conversation. Black man is dead. His family is grieving. Three young white boys committed the crime. But the most important thing to Boyce was, don't assume it's related to racism. Then he goes on, just like we can't assume that if the situation is reversed. When is the situation reversed, boys? First of all, if you are saying black people in America can be racist, first of all, you don't understand racism. You don't understand the basic definition of prejudice plus power. Black people do not have the power in America to exert racism over white people. But you know that, doctor. You know that. So there is no if the roles were reversed. And when do you see an epidemic of black men chasing down white folks, murdering them and dumping their bodies behind dumpsters? When do you see an epidemic of black cops murdering white people and black judges letting them get away with it? When does this reversal take place in America? Come on, man. He goes on. Also, we are so sensitive about white on black killings that we completely ignore black on black violence. Already, he 2 sentences in, and he used the first two racist white supremacist talking points. Don't assume it's about race. What about black on black violence? Why y'all ain't mad? Sensitive about white on black killing? Yes, yeah, Dr. Boyce. We are very folks murdering black people because most of the time they get away with it. They get to put us in chokeholds on subways, and then we have to have whole protests and beg a district attorney to file charges because white cops are willing to let them get away with it. When the hell does that ever happen when the roles are reversed? I'll wait. You give me the case when you ever saw a black man choke a white man to death and white cops say you can go home. Not never. So 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 he says we're sensitive about white on black killings, but we ignore black on black violence. That's a lie. First of all, it's a misnomer calling it black on black violence, but to suggest that black people ignore black people being murdered by black people, that's a lie. That's a white supremacist talking point. In what black neighborhood in America do they ignore black people being killed by black people? Every crime-ridden black neighborhood, the residents in that neighborhood are always concerned, always raising their voices against the violence in their neighborhood, always calling on the police to protect their neighborhoods, always calling on society to stop the poverty and the crime in the neighborhood. When do they just ignore so-called black on black violence? You don't live in a black neighborhood, I'm assuming. When do they ever ignore it? What are you talking about? You sound like you just came from a Trump rally. And then he goes on to say, This is why kids keep getting killed in cities like Chicago. The trifecta, and nobody notices. Nobody notices. I mean, not only are you using white supremacist talking points, you're insulting the intelligence of me because you're responding to me, and you're insulting the intelligence of black people. You had the unmitigated audacity to let that foolery come out your mouth to say black people don't notice black people being murdered. Maybe that's because you ain't a pimp preacher like me. You know, like since you like to call us pimp, you're not the one who gets the call when somebody's child is murdered. You're not the one who goes to the hospital to pray that they survive. You're not the one who has to comfort the family after their loved one has been killed. You're not the one who has to sit with the family and make funeral arrangements. You're not the one who has to preach the funeral of 14, 15, 16, 22-year-old black people who get murdered. But I ain't. People like me and Rudy McKissick and others, we are the ones who sit with these families, comfort these families, support these families, preach the funerals. How dare you sit up here and say nobody notices? What the hell are you talking about, boys? What are you talking about? Nobody notices. Then he goes on to say, our deaths should not be part of a political agenda. Negro, please. So when we condemn the brutalization of black bodies, the state-sanctioned violence against black people, it's a political agenda. What is my political agenda when I do? When I condemn violence against black people, what's my political agenda? Because I'm not running for political office. I'm not part of either political party. What is my political agenda, boys? If black lives matter, they should matter all the time, not just when it's racially dramatic. So that's what it is. It's racial dramatics. When black people get killed, I hope nobody in your family ever gets murdered by a white cop or a white vigilante. And somebody tells you that it's nothing but racial dramatics. I mean, are you hearing yourself? So of course I responded to um, this foolishness, and I basically said that he went with the it's not about race, black on black violence, and what about Chicago, all in the same tweet. All in the same tweet. Um, then the Negro comes back because he couldn't refute what I said. He couldn't refute the fact that he basically parroted word for word white supremacist talking points. So and so you got him when the conversation devolves into the name calling. You got him when the conversation all of a sudden goes completely off topic and they start with the same old tropes. And that stuff don't faze me. You know how many times people accuse pastors of being pimps and all this kind of stuff. So of course Boyce goes right to that, straight to that narrative. Beware of pimping pastors. And he's talking about me. And my thing is, man up, Boyce. If you gonna talk about me, call mine. I'm calling your name, Boyce Watkins. Beware of pimping pastors. Watch this. And NAACP gatekeepers. Let me see. Who's a pastor and a president of the NAACP? That's me. Oh, wow. Beware of pimping pastors and NAACP gatekeepers who seek to exploit the emotional pain of Black people by constantly whining about racism. Do y'all believe this Uncle Ruckus said this foolishness? Constantly whining about racism. Is that what we do? We whine about racism? So we shouldn't talk about racism? Is that what you're saying, boys? We shouldn't complain about racism. We should just not talk about it. Constantly whining about racism while only noticing racism when it comes from Republicans. And this is where you know the Negro is reaching. These individuals are simply prostitutes for the Democratic Party and serve no benefit to the progression of Black people. Because anybody and everybody who follows me knows that I consistently call out the foolishness regardless of political party. Matter of fact, I got a whole lot of liberals upset with me. A whole lot of the Democrat gatekeeping Negroes who come at me because of the fact that I call out the racism of the Democrats and of the Republicans. So not only does he devolve into the name calling, but then he just makes stuff up. I'm just gonna make up a narrative. You're gonna make up a and so those of you in Springfield, you know, I had Boyce Watkins at my church. So I asked him the question, you came to my church and got a check. So if I'm a pimp, who do pimps pay? Who works for pimps other than hoes? So if I'm a pimp, that must make you a hoe, Boyce. Oh, y'all, some of y'all getting uncomfortable, but y'all knew, you know, the title of this is if it's smoke you want, it's smoke you'll get. I'm not the turn the cheek pastor. I'm the Nat Turner kind of pastor. I'm not the lay down and let you walk over me pastor. And so I know a lot of people were like, oh, this is a shame. You shouldn't do this publicly. Let's be clear. Let's make it clear. If you attack somebody publicly, if you try to malign somebody's character publicly, if you call somebody a pimp and a prostitute publicly, do not expect for that person to try to correct it out of the public eye. If you're going to attack me and call me a pimp and a prostitute and all that kind of stuff in the public, I'm going to check you publicly. I'm going to address it publicly. I'm going to respond to it publicly. There's an old saying, don't start none, won't be none. Don't come for me if I didn't send for you. Whitney, that's my daughter, y'all. She said, you did not call this man a hoe. Listen, I'm just trying to put two and two together. I'm just, you know, making a logical, drawing a logical line. If you called me a pimp, which he did, he called me a pimp. And when Boyce came to my lecture series, he worked for me. I paid him well. He didn't have no problem with this pimp then when he came to get a check. So the point I'm making is if he worked for me and I'm a pimp, who works for pimps? Hoes. So if I'm a pimp, Boyce must be a hoe. That's all I'm saying. That makes perfect sense to me. Those of y'all who know me, you knew where you. Yep, yep. Let me get some folks up in here. The cable guy, you're in the space. 413-736-2781. I'm gonna open up the phone lines. Cable guy, come on now. You got the microphone. Cable guy going once, going twice. All right. Let's get some other folk up in here. ODB. What's happening, ODB? You got the
Yeah,
mic.
what's happening, Pastor? So, first off, I mean, hey, I'm not here for the drama, so I'm gonna leave that alone. Hopefully, you and Dr. Boyce Watkins can mend whatever y'all got going on. But what I'll say is the selective people get mad on the selective outrage. You know what I mean? I'm gonna kind of flip it the other way. How do you get mad at black people when we see black bodies touch the ground? You know what I mean? You can't. I don't think there's a scale of at that moment that we should be held to or say held at a political agenda. I'm from Ohio, and I know Dr. Boyce Watkins is an Ohio State guy. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, where that's Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton are the top 5 cities, or top 10 cities in police, brutality deaths. You know what I mean? Police shooting black kids. So I don't think there should be a gauge on that, or we should compare it to black on white crime, or that's the moment to bring up, uh, you know, to bring up this outrage or any other point to stand on the issue that happened when we see our brothers and sisters dead, on the street by the hands of other people. Like it's not like we don't have the conversations amongst ourselves in our households. I know every time I go to a barbecue with my family members of all ages, the black community's own issues get brought up. You know what I mean? We have the conversations over locks. Me trying to get my family members to quit calling them dreads. We go over these nuances in our own community. So it's not, we don't need to be the moment that we kind of give white people the piggyback coattail of saying, well, what about black issues as well? That's a moment where I do believe we should all stand in solidarity. But be a person that respects Dr. Boyce, and then coming on here, I didn't know about you till I got on Twitter Spaces, but I do got immense respect for you too, as well. You know what I mean? Hopefully, today's entertainment can be tomorrow's hatchet buried. But I'm gonna let two grown men rock out.
Appreciate you, bro. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That ain't the time. But we can have more than one conversation. We can talk about, when black people um, are violent against their own people. But that's a conversation that's separate and apart from state-sanctioned violence against black bodies. And black people should be the last folk who default to that conversation when we're condemning the brutalization of black folks at the hand of racist white people. Should be the last people dealing with that foolishness. Admiral Admiral Black, you're in the space. I'll let your boy.
Hey, good morning, Pastor. How you doing this morning?
Good, you.
I'm doing all right. I just had a quick question because I know that you mentioned earlier you were a pastor, and lately in the media, there's been a lot of reports coming out about black churches accruing over $500 billion since 1980s. Why is it that the community doesn't have any understanding of how much money's actually been raised by the church and the church family so we could actually figure out what we could do with the problems that's happening in our community? Would you not agree that that much money could have made a change into the community?
It has. Is your assumption that money that has been raised by the church has not benefited the community? Because that's a false narrative.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would just say that there isn't as much bold transparency on how much money has actually come through the church home and the black. Uh,
Do you belong to it? Do you belong to a
I
church?
stopped going to the church because of lack of transparency.
So you stop going to church. So who do you think the church needs to be transparent with?
The people, because our church is registered as 501.
Okay, so let me help you here. And appreciate the question. Let me help you here. Um, Churches are responsible to be transparent with their membership, with the people who give the money. And it's only in the church that people ask questions like that. None of y'all, when you go to the corner store and spend your money, when you spend your money at the club, when you spend your money in all of these Asian owned establishments in your community, none of y'all ever say, we need y'all to be transparent and tell us what y'all did with our money. But then it's always folk who don't go to church and who don't spend a dime in church, who always be like, the church ought to tell the community what it did with the money. I have an annual meeting, and most pastors I know have meetings with their members and are very transparent with the budget and what happened with the money that the people gave. And if you were a member of that church, you would probably know pretty well what that church does with the finances that it raises. But I don't think any church is responsible to call a community-wide meeting and say, hey, all of y'all people who don't belong to our church and who never give a dime in our church and who never support our church, I'm going to open up our books to let you know what we're doing with your money. And that ain't none of their business when you're not a member. So, I mean, we can play that game and collectively talk about, what black people do with their billions of dollars, what this group does with its money. We can talk about fraternities and sororities and how much money they get, but don't nobody get to know what happens with the money in that fraternity and sorority but the members of it. But all of a sudden, we want the churches to tell everybody their business. Cheslin Figaro.
Good morning, Bishop.
Yes.
I have tried to stay out of this. I really, really have. As you know, and those who know me, I try not to get into other people's beef, but I am disturbed by this. Really, really disturbed. And, I know Boyce has been, doing subliminal tweets against you, and I really don't get it, Boyce. I really don't. To be over 50 years old and to sit here and do sub tweets and say some bishop is not a point of saying his name. It's giving manufactured beef for clicks. I don't respect it. It's weak. It's not manly. I expect that from these 20-year-olds that play on Twitter, but I expect more from you boys being a scholar. If you have an issue with Bishop, talk about it directly or talk about it in the public space that you've asked him to do on numerous times. For him to, for you to support him and then turn around and then now come after you for no apparent reason at all, it makes no sense. You're not the only one talking about white supremacy. You're not the only one that have the views that you do. So, boys, what is this about? And to the caller that just asked about what the church is doing with their money, why are you not asking what Boyce is doing with other folks' money? He's literally sitting over there charging $500, $1,000, $1,500, and Bishop hasn't said a damn thing about how you raise your money, how you spend your money, how you use your gift, which you should, by the way. If you've earned an education in a certain area, it's nothing wrong with charging those fees. But Bishop didn't jump into that with you, Boyce. He didn't jump on when Michi X was calling you a scammer. He didn't jump on it when you and Tariq had a beef and he was calling you Moise Watkins. Like, let's really talk about it, boys. I don't understand it. Tariq talks about, and I'm not trying to bring him into it, but I just want to go ahead and talk about it. Tariq talks about white supremacy far more than Bishop does, but you were gladly going to be a part of his expo. You were on the stage with us at the rally for reparations. So what is this selective choosing that you're doing? Why are you doing it to Bishop? Do you assume that he's a soft target, an easy target? What is this about? It makes absolutely no sense at all. Let's call a thing a thing. What is your problem with Bishop? As someone that advocates across this country, who has worked on campaigns looking for ministers to speak up, we can count on one hand, and I mean one hand, the ministers that have spoken up against racial injustice. Not only does Bishop have problems with the faith-based community, you have went against the NAACP. You did it recently. You have spoken up against your own organizations for what is what's right. You have lost friends in NAACP. You have spoke up against fraternities and sororities and lost friends. You've lost friends on the Democrat side. You've lost friends on the Republican side. Across the damn board, Bishop has challenged Democrats, Republicans, progressives alike. This man is not sitting in a mega church getting millions of dollars. I was there at the church just like you were, boys, and you know damn well Bishop is not living off of the money off the backs of poor people. Many of you can't say the same. This is wrong what you're doing, boys. It's wrong. And Bishop is not by himself. Whether I agree with everything that he does or not, if I agree with everything that you do or not, this is wrong. And as a grown damn man, he has reached out to you to have the conversation. You're wrong. You come over to my page a lot. I see you, homie. I see the little comments, and then you go do a post and do it. And I'm letting you know right now, this ain't what you want with me. Because I can get way more ugly than Michi got. Way more petty than Tariq got. Stop thinking that just because people are not responding to you, that they can't get on the level with you. And I just want to be clear, boys, I don't have a problem with you personally, but I do rock with Bishop, and I think what you're doing is wrong. And if you called yourself a friend with friends like you, he don't need enemies.
There it is. Appreciate you, sis. Always. Always. Listen, I gotta go. I gotta move out your way. Don Felton is in the studio. I wish I could get to some more of y'all, but I can't. He's coming up next with mid-morning jazz and great black music. If you're looking for a place to worship, check us out at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ, 35 Alden Street, Springfield, Massachusetts, 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning. Check me out on Monday morning for the spoken word, where we'll get into some more subjects to each and every one of you in the spaces. Appreciate you all. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you, so do I. I'm good. How you feel, man?